I think it was a really good win, a good dominant performance, a 90-minute performance by all of us. This is kind of the first game we've had our full roster, so it was nice to have the chemistry, and to get a 5-0 win is always awesome. I was coming back from a foot injury, so this is my first game back, so obviously to get 3 goals under my belt is awesome. I wish I had a little bit more. There was a couple I wanted back, but not complaining. Having a hat trick is always awesome. It's important to just keep possession, to not get yourself in unnecessary tackles or 50-50 balls that we don't really need at this point. So I think being able to switch the point of attack and keep possession was key to finishing out the match.
Thank you.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Kristi Kivi, and I will be your host tonight for this special edition of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Today's episode will be a part of our featured series, Orange and Blue Profile, where we'll talk with people who are influential to soccer culture in the Queen City and beyond. Today, I have the pleasure to be speaking with Kylee Simmons, a Cincinnati native who's currently playing D1 soccer at the University of Tennessee. Go Vols. Kylee was a standout player at Lakota West High School before starting her college career at Mizzou, where she earned several honors, including the 2023 First Team All-SEC. She's a recent transfer to Tennessee, and we can't wait to hear about what's next for her. Kylee, welcome to Cincinnati Soccer Talk.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So you grew up playing soccer in Cincinnati, and you played a lot of sports growing up. Do you think that the soccer culture here in Cincinnati influenced you choosing that as your main sport at all?
Oh, for sure. I think that Cincinnati has kind of this aura of starting club soccer young, and that can be controversial in some different ways. I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, but I think being able to get in a club soccer environment at the age of 10, I think really helped kind of drive my passion for that sport, because basketball was also like pretty up there. I think I loved both of those sports pretty equally. But there wasn't really such thing as club basketball, and the club basketball that we had in our town, it overlapped right with club soccer season, so I wasn't able to fully do both. But I think Cincinnati's, like I said, aura of just having that high level of soccer just right in my backyard, I think for sure made it a lot easier to pursue that as my passion.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, the soccer culture here is huge, especially now with how much FCC has grown and everything like that. It's definitely, you can tell from the youth levels that there's been a lot of influence on that. So it's really cool to see people who take that with them and continue to gain success in their sport like you have. Last summer, you played for the USLW team Kings Hammer. What was that experience like?
Yeah, that was awesome. I love summer soccer. I love spring. I love spring and summer. It just kind of gives the different um, type of creativity to the game that you don't really get to experience in the fall season. Fall season, especially with the SEC and all the other Power Four schools, and even just Division One in itself, it's very rigid and structured, and you do the same thing every day, and you don't have as much free reign to play without any of that pressure behind needing to get results and playing time and all the stuff around what kind of that season brings. And so being able to play with Kings Hammer this summer was just such a fun experience, and I'm looking forward to playing with them again. And it was competition, it was high level, it was intense, but it also had this sense of just free play, and you could play however you want without worried about like making mistakes. And being from Cincinnati, I think it was also cool that I was able to also reconnect with other club teammates that I had had in the past that have become competitors, and being able to play with them again was really, really cool, and I look forward to be playing with them again this summer.
Yeah, that's so fun. I got to get myself out to a game this summer. I've never seen Kings Hammer, so that'd be really exciting. So you play 9, right? Typically
Yes, yeah,
9
yeah.
position. What are some of the things that because you mentioned the lack of kind of rigidness that exists in the fall leagues. What's some of the things that you would want to experiment with, or that you have experimented with kind of a little bit less pressure when playing that position in the summer and spring?
Yeah, I think that it allows you to try different moves in the final third and different off the ball movements as well as the moves on the ball, to kind of create yourself and put yourself in an environment to score in a way that you never have before, and you can kind of grow in that discomfort, along with also playing different positions. I will play in the front line always, but being a left-footed player and can use both of my feet pretty well, I like to experience also playing as the 7 and the 11, and hoping to add some like versatility to my game in that way. And being able to do that in the summer is really, really, really good for your individual development because not really switching positions like the 9 to the 7 or is that different, but in season you're not able to kind of make that switch when you're trying to play 2 games every week, and I love that part of summer for sure.
Absolutely. And I think there's something really cool about experimenting with that and then taking what you've learned from those other positions or those other areas and applying it to that 9 position. I'm sure there's a lot of things you get to try out in the spring and the summer that you then go back to the 9 and say, oh, well, this works really well for me. And now you're seeing someone else play the 7 or the 11, and you know kind of
Yeah.
more what to do as a 9, I would think too.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Having grown up here and again seeing that soccer culture evolve with the increased success of FC Cincinnati and the recent bid for the NWSL team, although we didn't get it, but seeing how far we kind of got in that process, what would you like to see for the future of soccer in Cincinnati?
I would love to see a women's team, specifically if it could have the FC Cincinnati crest, that would be super cool. I know the thought of like if we were to have gotten that bid with the NWSL, I don't know what the chances are that we would have also been FC Cincinnati, like, but I think having that as a future is definitely really exciting, and hopefully that opportunity arises because I think having a sense of community that the men's FC team has already brought in, it will only add to it if the women can also wear that crest. And so I think that that would create a sense of connectivity between both men and women's soccer, especially because on the national scale, like the women's soccer is growing exponentially, and the US women's soccer team also like has had more success than the men historically, and so I think being able to connect that with the same crest in Cincinnati would be my dream for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was reading a statistic about how the NWSL fans and the MLS fans tend to overlap very little typically, especially in cities that
Mhm.
have two teams like Orlando or Kansas City. And when we were kind of looking at the bid for Cincinnati, Cincinnati's kind of an outlier there. Like we have a
Mhm.
lot more fans that make up the middle of that Venn diagram who both watch and root for MLS and NWSL. So I agree that could bring a really, really cool connection. And I was definitely really disappointed that we didn't get a bid, but I hope we can see professional women's soccer in Cincinnati soon.
For
I
sure.
think that would be
Yes.
great. So you played 3 years at Mizzou and recently just transferred to the University of Tennessee, which is my alma mater. Can you talk a bit about what inspired that decision?
Yeah. I think that um it's kind of a tough question because the only thing I can really explain that sums it up is just a gut feeling. I am so incredibly grateful for my time at Mizzou, and I would not trade a single moment spent. And I think that Missouri is the reason that set me up to now play as a lady volunteer and hold that pride that I have now. And I think that it was just something personal where I wanted something else and I wanted to reach a new level that I didn't feel as though I was going to reach at Missouri, and I wanted to just see where that would take me. And unfortunately, I don't have a grad year necessarily, so the COVID years where people will go take their 5th year somewhere else, I didn't have that. And I truly believed that deep down it would always have been a regret for me if I didn't make that decision for myself. And um so yeah, I'm still very close with my Mizzou teammates and love them all and no hard feelings at all, but I think above anything it was a personal decision that I didn't want to end up regretting later in life.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. I think putting yourself in a new environment and out of your comfort zone always pushes you to a higher level, and that's totally understandable. At Mizzou, you had been there 3 years, and you had definitely started to show some leadership on that team. Now, with the shift to Tennessee, how has that transition been for you in terms of team culture, kind of on and off the field, and what role do you see yourself playing on this Tennessee team?
Yeah, it's awesome. The girls have been nothing but welcoming, and I have felt at home as soon as I stepped on campus. I love Knoxville. I love being a lady volunteer. I just came from a Lady Vol Summit where we talked about kind of the history behind the Lady Volunteer logo, and I hold so much pride in that already. And um, the transition has been so smooth because of the girls in the team and the culture, and what my coaches are trying to do and build. And I think it also helps that I'm not a freshman coming in. I'm not a first year transfer. I've had so much experience playing. So stepping in the spring, it hadn't really been that different than what I've been used to. So that was awesome. And I think that going in, my role on Tennessee will be whatever they need it to be. I am looking to put the team above myself 100% and do whatever it takes for us to win. I think I want to be playing in December next year, and the games that I was watching on TV, I want to still be playing at that point. And so whatever that role looks like, I'm going to do it. And I'm so excited to just like embody that journey, and I truly think that I have a complete selfless mindset going in to where I don't have any set expectations and I'm going to do whatever the team needs me to do in whatever way that I can.
Yeah, and that's so great. I mean, the Lady Vols brand is so strong, especially when you go to school and you're on that campus. There's so much history and so much pride that the university and its fans take in the Lady Volunteers. And so that program is such an amazing thing to be a part of, and you should be as excited as you are. And as a fan myself, I would love to see some more hardware from the Lady Vols soccer program, and I would love to see you guys playing in December as well. Um, what are you most excited about for this upcoming season at UT, and have you gone to Gus's?
Have I gone to what?
Gus's, Good Times Deli.
Oh, no, I haven't because I didn't know what that was when you said that. So that's going to be on my next bucket list.
That is like
Um,
the number one place to visit. It's Peyton Manning's favorite sandwich
okay.
shop. Highly recommend. But yeah, what are you most excited about being in Knoxville and then for the upcoming season?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to my personal growth. And I think that I'm really just taking these last like few semesters I have with being in this college environment to just not take a single second for granted, and just have my feet be where my mind is and stay present and stay grateful always. And that growth mindset, personally, I'm really, really wanting a lot out of myself just because I made this hard decision for myself and myself only, and I did it to grow and to personally reach a level that even I don't know that I can yet. And so I'm excited to put myself in those uncomfortable positions and just see where I can go individually and how that translates on the field. And as a lady volunteer, seeing what this team can do, this I believe in every single one of the girls that I've only met for 2 weeks. I feel like I've been here for years, and that culture and that feeling is something that I really do think that it will take us super far this upcoming fall. And I know that Joe and John and my coaches, they're really looking forward to bringing another SEC championship home. And that was the reason why they had brought me, the other transfers, in, is to help build that and create that environment where we can bring a championship back to Knoxville.
Yeah, that's an amazing perspective. I think that push and that growth is so huge for you individually, and it's obviously a huge component to being on a team when your coaches are able to foster that and kind of foster that as a team culture as well to push the whole team further. So I think that's really cool. I've seen some of your day in my life videos on TikTok, and you seem really, really dedicated to your training and your wellness. What has made the biggest difference for you in terms of staying healthy and at your best?
Um, oh, that's a good question. I will have to say I missed what you said. It kind of glitched out a little bit. Can you repeat the beginning part of the question?
Yeah, so I saw on your TikTok, you've got some day in my life videos where you kind of highlight your training and your wellness, especially when you're on breaks or back home in Cincinnati. And what do you think has made the biggest difference for you in terms of staying healthy and at your best?
Yeah, I think that learning to not just like train really hard, but also to train smart and recognizing the cues that I need to take a rest day, or instead of doing a really hard soccer session, I'm going to do recovery and mobility, and recognizing that those rest and recovery days are just as important as reaching a new max on a back squat or a sprint. And having that mindset, I think, really helped me, especially on break. This past season, I had dealt with like a partial torn quad injury. And so I think I was forced to change my perspective on that and really recognize, okay, this is what I need to do to get back to my best, because I was faced with my first ever injury in college and missing college games. That was the first time that that had happened to me. And I know that it's something that happens to a lot of athletes, and so it was up to me to decide, okay, this break, this is what I'm changing, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to prioritize mobility recovery, recognize that it doesn't need to be 110% go hard and never stop when you have days where you can put 100% into the mobility, into the recovery, into the nutrition, hydration, all the way down to the little stuff you do every day. I think kind of shifting that just a little bit definitely helped me kind of enter a different mindset coming into not only my break, but also this upcoming spring.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of mental strength as well to kind of stick to those plans. And it's hard because as someone who's also partially torn their quad playing soccer, like rec adult soccer, but
Yeah,
it's
still,
it's a
it
hard
hurts.
injury to kind of grapple with because it feels like you can do more than you can, I feel like a lot of the time, and so it's really hard to keep yourself in line with your routines and reminding yourself, like, not to go too fast, like you said, and just
Mhm.
kind of give yourself that time for rest and recovery, I think is a really, really difficult thing to do, and so that's definitely I can understand how that's a huge advantage when you kind of nail that and get that down. Um, the other thing that can be really difficult with being a student athlete is balancing academics and the demands of a soccer, like a elite soccer schedule. How do you handle that type of pressure and prioritize your mental health as well?
Yeah, I think a huge part of that is having the vulnerability to recognize when you need help outside of what you can give, like to yourself. I think that people, especially athletes growing up, you have this mentality where it's not talked about. There's a bit of a stigma around it, or you physically push yourself to new limits. So, mental health, like, what is mental health? Like, kind of, there's just not as much education around the importance and the significance that it takes, especially like with your performance. Your mental health can affect your physical performance so much more than what people realize. And so I think it's just really, really important to be self-reflective and almost have that maturity to recognize when you need to look after yourself or when you need to fill your cup a little bit more on the mental health area, whether it be talking to someone else, a therapist, a coach. A lot of schools now, especially Mizzou and both Tennessee, had mental health therapists on campus for student athletes. And so there are resources that are available to us. And so being able to just kind of take that leap and use them when needed. I know I've done that in the past and it has truly helped me not only in that moment, but give me tools to where I know what to do the next time I kind of feel those feelings. And then I don't have to use that therapist anymore. So it's not a temporary thing where once you start going, you're all of a sudden this weak minded person. And I think that's the stigma around it that I wish people didn't have is that mental health and recognizing that you struggle with mental health is not it doesn't show a sign of weakness. It actually shows in immense strength and maturity to be able to recognize that. And so, in the same way of reaching our physical goals and taking care of our bodies, I just want every athlete to also take care of their mind.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to talk about in this day and age. One of my favorite things that a therapist has ever said to me is you don't get an award for doing it alone. You don't get an award for making it harder for yourself. You know,
Mhm.
whether that be going to therapy, starting on a medication, prioritizing your mental health in other ways, there's no award for not doing any of that and still surviving. And I think when you're pushing yourself so hard as an athlete, as a student even, there's so much going on. It's such a pivotal and changing time in your life. It's a really hard thing to prioritize sometimes, but it's so important for people to understand that it helps like all the way around. Like you said, it helps your physical performance so much too if you're in the right mindset and you're mentally healthy.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really, really big deal.
Agreed.
Um, do you have any kind of on that note and on a more fun note, do you have any pregame routines or rituals that you do to kind of keep yourself calm, keep your head in the game? And then are there any fun things that you like to do on a game day?
Yeah. Um, so this isn't really a pregame ritual, but a lot of the socks that we have, it has like an L and a R for like your left sock and your right sock. So for games, I have to flip flop it. I don't know why. I started doing it on accident when I was little, and I think one time I had like a really good game and I realized that they were flipped, and so it just became something that I had to do. So when I see the left and the R, I put my left sock on my right foot and the right sock on my left foot. It's some people say that that's like it's really uncomfortable. I don't really notice a difference at all. And so that is something I do, and I also do um, just like a little pre-game journal. I journal in my life outside of soccer, and so when I added this to my game, it really took kind of my visualization to the next level. And so I will do individual goals I have for myself, offensively and defensively, which are a little bit more tactic specific. So it's specific to who we're playing and what the coaches are looking for out of that game. And then I just put three individual goals for myself. So whether it be have four shots on goal that game or for general, I'll do three of those for offense, three for defense, and three for general. And so I think that that's been a really cool addition to my game that I think helped me a lot more than I realized. Looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that actually really affected my performance.
Yeah, and that's really cool because soccer is such an intellectual sport, and there's so
Mm-hmm.
much thought that goes into it that I think people neglect to think of because when you're on the field, everything is happening so fast. But at least when
Yeah.
I played growing up, like my mind was running 24/7 the entire time I'm on the field about tactics and what I'm supposed to be doing and what plays I'm visualizing. Do you ever go back after? I'm sure you do. You go back after a game and read those goals and then kind of evaluate your own performance, and does that influence what you write for the next game?
Yeah, a lot of them like carry over. I think that especially in my role as an attacking player, you always want to have shots on goal. You always want to do this and complete this many passes and create this type of scoring opportunity for teammates. And so a lot of it does translate, but I think just reading it in the moment and writing it again almost makes it a second memory and a muscle memory almost at that point to
Yeah.
where a lot of them are the same. I can go back and look and I probably have the same goal or somewhat of the same goal in every single one of the ones that I have, but the repetitive habit of just doing it again, it just makes it so much easier for the next time for my brain to almost think about it automatically to where I probably don't need to write them anymore. I'm always thinking about it, but just that like habitual repetitive pregame ritual you could say I think just really helps like dial in my focus mentally before the game. But yeah, they overlap all the time and I don't love to think and evaluate too much because I think it also can create a little bit of a spiral in my head of almost being like, oh well, you didn't do this and you didn't. So a lot of the times I like to save them and I have a folder in my phone to where I can go back and look at all of them, but I don't because I don't want it to become an obsessive kind of thing where I think about it all and then the positive part of it kind of decreases. So I don't
Yeah.
want to lessen the significance of it during the game.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. I think it's probably such a good shift to put yourself in that mindset beforehand and just focus on that and the feeling and visualizing what you want and need to do on the field. So that's a really cool. I haven't heard anyone say that they do that. I think that's a really neat kind of tactic that you use. If you had to choose one current female soccer player, professional soccer player who you would compare your playing style to, who would you choose?
Oh, that's a fun question. I it's funny. I thought of someone and then I was like, well, this is someone I want to be more like, but
I
I love Sophia Smith. I love watching her. I think that I love her. I wish I could be like her in every way and still be myself, but her ability to run at players 1v1 and she just carries herself with so much confidence and composure when she does that. And I think that that is something that I look at and I'm like, yeah, I want to embody that in my game. Um, and growing up, not a current player, but I have to bring her up. I think like Abby Wambach inspires my style of play a lot. And watching her as a kid, her bravery and her just all or nothing mentality of going into every header. I mean, I'm sitting here with a black eye. That was from me trying to like make a run in the final third and getting elbowed. Like I've had so many black eyes, and I think a lot of it is me watching her get stapled up on the field in the World Cup as a kid. Like
Mhm.
and so I think her style and her tenacity and the way that she plays the game and kind of being that more um I would say strong, true nine, like back to goal type of goal scorer is more of what I embody. And then I would like to have more versatility in the creative side that I think Sophia Smith gives a little bit more. So that would be my answer for that.
Yeah, I have that like video of Abby Wambach getting her head stapled just in my head at all times. Every time
Yes.
I think about her as a player, I think about and like think about such a strong, confident player up top
Hmm.
and the way that she used her head on the field. I literally think about it all the time.
Yep.
And yeah, Sophia Smith, her the whole triple espresso top line, her and Trinity and Mal are just incredible. I think the way
Yes.
that they play is so interesting and creative. Like you said, it's really, really cool to see what those players are doing. And I love that you've kind of have this vision of this is kind of the way I play now that's similar to this player. And these are things from another player I really admire that I want to bring into my game. I think that's a really cool
Mhm.
mindset to have. Another kind of women's sports focused question. Who's your favorite non soccer female athlete, current or retired, and why?
Caitlin Clark or Paige Beckers. I mean, that's I talked about basketball earlier, but like I truly believe that if I would have chosen a different path, I would have found a way to play basketball at the same level that I'm playing soccer if I would have flipped. Basketball like is a hidden love of mine. Not even hidden, but I truly still feel like a basketball player at heart. I think a lot of soccer players play basketball too. It's a very comparative sport where I mean, when I played basketball in high school, the majority of us also played soccer and play soccer now collegiately. And so, um, I love what they did for the women's game. Um, Tennessee actually plays UConn on Thursday, and I'm already excited to go to the game. I'm so excited. I love them both. I love how they're different. I love how they play the game with the same fire and seeing what they did last year. And Caitlin Clark, I wear 22, she wore 22. I mean, it's just it's a natural like um drawn to her that way, but coming from a basketball lover and being a collegiate athlete now as their collegiate athlete, it's just been such a cool comparison because it's not something that is far from my heart sport wise, but also what we do every day. It's not someone I'm looking up to in the sense of she's 10 years older than me. This is what she's doing. Like, we're doing very similar things, and look at how they're paving the way for women's sports and what they did with the numbers of the national championship game and all of it. I just think it's absolutely phenomenal, and it gives me chills every time I think about it. And so, would have loved to see Caitlin play in college, but would love to see her play in the WNBA. But I'm seeing Paige on Thursday. But those two always will be a highlight for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. They're such incredible athletes and incredible people as well. And it's been so fun to follow that journey. As someone who has been watching women's college basketball because of the Lady Vols legacy at Tennessee for a lot longer than I
Hmm.
think a lot of other people watched college basketball, it was really nice to kind of have everyone catch up. Be like,
Yeah,
we've been telling you this is so good. And then have people follow that into the WNBA because of the star players. This past year was a really incredible thing to witness.
yeah, and
Um,
I will say too, when you said current or former, I do want to kind of highlight my mom a little bit in that too. She swam at Ohio State, and she was phenomenal, but the one thing that I carry that I want to embody with her is her humility through all of it. She even to this day like is the least flashy materialistic person like you would ever meet, and I don't even think she understands that the what she did when she swam was as big of a deal as what she even like thought it was back then. I mean, talking to her, she's like, "What? No, it wasn't that big of a deal." But she broke the Ohio State record. She's in the Hall of Fame. She was Big Ten Swimmer of the Year multiple years. She had the record that was hers in the 400 IM when she won national championships for decades. The record was not broken. And so she just holds such grace and humility with having all of that. And I don't think I've ever recognized that until now being a collegiate athlete, because growing up, all I knew was my mom was a swimmer and that's it. I didn't understand what it took. She never bragged. She never forced me to do swimming because she was a swimmer. She never did any of that. She let me completely pave my own journey through sport. And now being a collegiate athlete myself and looking at her and looking at what she did and accomplished, I'm like, oh my God, like you are the best woman on the planet. And so my mom also is definitely a female athlete that I need to highlight with wanting to be more and look more like and all that too.
Yeah, and that's absolutely incredible. I think it's so sad that so many female athletes who were shattering those glass ceilings back then and, breaking records and doing incredible things in their sport at that time didn't get any recognition. And I cannot imagine like how cool it would be to have someone in your family, your own mom, kind of talk about that as if it was, just a casual thing that she did. I can't imagine like just being able to hear that growing up and be like, oh, well, you talk about it so casually, well, then I can do it. And
Yeah.
it's nice now to kind of have both where people talk about it as like a casual thing. It's like, well, oh, yeah, you can go play D1 sports. You can go be a professional soccer player. And then also seeing the growth of the professional leagues and female athletes in general and the level of attention that that's getting now, seeing how possible it is in all aspects has been so cool. So I really think that that's a very unique thing that's going on right now and that
For
you grew
sure.
up with as well.
Yeah.
Um, as as professional women's sports are kind of hitting their stride right now, have you noticed that shift on a college level as well? Like, would you say in the past, since your freshman year at Mizzou to where you are now at Tennessee, there's been kind of a visible shift in popularity or level of coaching, any of that?
Yeah, I would say I don't know I don't know where it starts. I think it's cause and effect and it's very reversible in both ways. I don't know if NIL really impacted the blossoming of women's sports or the opposite, but I think they both play a part in it. And I think that from my freshman year to now and before, and my mom would talk about it. I mean, obviously NIL was not a thing when my mom swam, and so being able to see that growth, I think that when used properly, NIL is such an amazing way for athletes to not just monetize, because it's not all about the money, and that's where I think it can kind of get a little bit greedy in a sense and almost kind of shift the way and take it away from what it was meant to do. But it's meant to build your name, and for women specifically, that's so important, because at the end of the day, we understand we're not football, we're not going to bring in all the money. It's harder for our names to get on t-shirts and that kind of stuff, but having the NIL branding that we've started to have, and even the shift that I've seen through my 3 years, it's been absolutely phenomenal. And I think that, I mean, everyone had a Caitlin Clark jersey, so they're going to go buy her WNBA jersey. And so it creates that effect where these little kids had her first jersey and now they want her second jersey, and then and so those kids get to grow with their favorite female athletes as they get to grow as well. And I think that's really cool. I had an Alex Morgan jersey and would have loved, like, if I was a little bit older, because I was young when I saw her play nationally, but like I would have loved to be the kid who had her college jersey and then had her like women's national team jersey. So I think that NIL for women in sports specifically is a really really cool way of the shift to see the professional side of it also blossom.
Yeah, and I can definitely see how that's impacted throughout the whole thing. Are you familiar with Alona Mar, the rugby player?
Yeah, actually, yes.
So
Yeah.
she talked about recently in an interview how women athletes don't necessarily get to just be athletes. Like their life is not just about playing the game. And so
Mhm.
especially with something like women's rugby, which is not nearly as popular as women's soccer has gotten, she talked about how she herself has to be an entire brand.
Yeah.
And so in order to grow the game and make a living wage and do all these things, she has to be Alona Mar, the person, and not just Alona Mar, the athlete. And so I think that there's definitely a lot to be seen from that as well. And I think it starts at college. That's where the growth starts. I
Yeah.
mean, it makes such a huge difference having female athletes be popular and well regarded And so I think that's been a really cool thing to see kind of the growth for.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
as women's soccer, college soccer starts to gain more attention, is there anything you want to see more of?
Honestly, like this might sound kind of obvious when it comes to as it becomes more popular, but like more people in the stands at games. I think that that engagement is still something that we're missing a little bit, and from on every front. I mean, there's certain schools like it is extremely difficult to play at Arkansas because they load the stands with drums, and but it's not a unanimous thing where even the bottom team in men's basketball, there's still going to be people like at their games. And so I
Mhm.
think finding a way to engage in that way and create a fan base that wants to be at games is something that I want to see in the future for sure. And as I mean, I think that Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers and Angel Reese and that whole thing started it because you would see that it blew up on the women's basketball side, and I think people recognize like, oh yeah, women's sports can be fun and not just like fun to play but fun to watch and fun to be at, and it's not that it's not different than a men's sport either. It's just as entertaining. There's just as much physicality and and
Mhm.
intensity and all of that. And um I think seeing that grow just holistically on the women's scale is something that I definitely would want to see, especially even on the softball scale. I'd like to see it as well because women's softball is so fun to watch. And people go out and I personally think it's more fun to watch than baseball. Um, but people go to all these baseball games and people go to the MLB and go to a baseball game even if they don't like baseball, just because it's something that people like to watch. And so I know that it's not going to blow up in the same way, but seeing growth and just any step in the right direction of women's engagement in person, I think is something that I really, really want to see just enhance as it becomes more popular.
Yeah, absolutely. I play drums at the FCC games, so maybe I'll have to come down to Knoxville and
Yes.
intimidate some of your opponents in
Yes.
the fall. But yeah, I agree. I have nieces who have season tickets. They got season tickets to the Washington Spirit games for Christmas. They live in
Yeah.
Maryland,
Okay.
and like I that concept is so wild to me. I know that's not college, but I didn't even have like that growing up. Really, like
Mhm.
NWSL exposure was so little and so new when I was even in high school, and it like wasn't there was nobody in the stands, and now it's becoming this huge thing. And seeing the little girls that like I adore watch growing up look at that and be like, that's attainable, and these players, a lot of them came from college and they were able to do this. I mean, it's so cool that they have that now.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, that's yeah, I don't remember I truly don't remember there even being an NWSL team, which there was obviously, but I would go to watch the US national team play. So when
Mhm.
they were close, they played at the Columbus Crew Stadium a lot growing up. And so I would go to those games whenever I could. But that's the only representation that I remember ever having, not even knowing that women's professional soccer was even a thing.
Yeah, I my first ever professional women's sporting event was seeing the US women's national team play a friendly in DC when I
Mhm.
was like
Yeah.
17. Like
Yeah.
that was it. I think Mia Hamm came to like one of our soccer camps once, but like it was so much smaller.
Yeah.
So looking into the future, what comes next for you? What are your goals kind of post college? And like where do you see yourself coming out of this after this
Yeah.
presidency?
It's funny, we actually did at the Pat Summit thing we were just at, we actually did like little vision boards. So we kind of even touched on that, which it's so funny that we're now having that conversation because I see a lot of similarities with that. But I think a big thing for me personally is I really want to have my mind and my feet at the same place. I think I mentioned that earlier, and I know a lot of people can relate, but I can kind of get in this mindset where setting really, really specific, heavy expectations and then not meeting them, it hurts, and I think
Mhm.
that it becomes one of those things where you can get in a bad mindset of feeling like you failed or that you weren't enough or that if you did this, then you have to do this and all of that part of it. And so I'm trying to almost use this opportunity to just set no expectations and just grow and remind myself that I don't have to be here, but I get to be here and let's just see what it can do because I think that your mind can almost limit you. And so I think recognizing that I have no expectations for myself is such a freeing feeling, but then also recognizing that I do have goals. I would love to play after college. I That is definitely a dream of mine. And if that opportunity presents itself, I'm going to take that and walk through that door as fast as I can and love every second of it. But then I also I want everyone to recognize it that you're so much more than your sport. And so if that door doesn't open for me post college, I have plans to go to grad school and I'm going to go to grad school after I'm done with my professional career and then come back to it. So I still have a path. It just depends on what starts first and I think that I'm super comfortable in whichever path that life kind of leads me down. I'm incredibly thankful and grateful for my college career and I've loved every second of it and would love to continue my career if possible. And if not, I want to be a PA. So I will be starting that grad school next year or year and a half from now, depending if my college career does not continue. But if it does, then I will go to grad school in 5 years or however long, whatever. That can wait. But just whatever door opens up in the future is the one I'm going to take.
Yeah, and I think that's a really grounded perspective to have. I One of my favorite quotes that I learned from my father-in-law actually is always have a plan but write it in pencil.
Mm.
So kind of just that perspective of like knowing what you want and what your abilities can do and where you want it to take you, but always being willing to like accept that you might have to erase something, you might have to cope with change along the way, I think is a really kind of similar way to look at your future and your goals. So I think that's a really smart approach. And then, just as our last kind of wrap up, if you could give advice to young girls today playing soccer in Cincinnati, what would you say?
Oof, that's a tough question. Um, I wrote on that same vision board to just remember that I'm living the dream that my little girl dreamt, like my little self dreamt. And I think that the advice that I could give and give anything is just like you can do it. And I know that sounds so simple, but especially girls, as you grow up, like you're going to be told over and over that you can't, or something's going to come in your way and you're going to think that you're not good enough, or those insecurities are going to creep in, and you're just naturally going to have that mindset where you feel like you can't achieve what you want. And it could even be your dream changing. I mean, I never would have thought that I would be a transfer. That's not No one goes into their college career picking a school and like wanting to transfer. That's not a mindset that anybody goes into collegiate athletics with. And so it could be also adapting and recognizing that your dream may look a little bit different, but you can do it. And so that sense of confidence is something that I work on every day. And I also want to instill in every athlete and every little girl or boy, not just women, but women specifically when it comes to just having that little mindset of insecurities that creep in, especially growing up being a teenager. Being a teenage girl is really hard. It just will naturally happen. And so, coming from someone who's gone through pretty much all of it, I've seen all sides of the college game. I've transferred. I've had to sacrifice other sports. I've had to sacrifice high school soccer for my last 2 years so I could play club. I've had an ACL tear. I've done this. So, like, I've really seen every side of it and I'm still coming out the other side and being like, yeah, no, I'm living my dream. And so whatever happens and whatever you go through, you can do it and you can achieve anything that you want.
Yeah, and that's so incredible to hear. I think kind of that exposure, and especially having girls now who can go online and see interviews like this and look at people like you doing the thing. There's been obstacles, there's been change, and you're still doing it. You're still accomplishing what you set out to do, I think is so important. So that's been just an amazing thing with today's day and age, and especially athletes like yourself. But yeah, I think we'll wrap it there. I really hope I get to come see you play at King's Hammer, and honestly, I'll probably come down to Knoxville in the fall. So, would
Please
love to
tell
get to see
everyone
you.
to come to Knoxville.
I'll bring a whole caravan. We'll get a bus.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you so much, Kylee. I can't wait to follow along with the rest of your journey and see what you accomplish in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Awesome.